Hello Year 2. This week we are going to be reading part of a Roald Dahl book. Now these are some Roald Dahl books that we have either read in class or during reading comprehension, or maybe you have seen one of the films. This week we are going to be looking at Matilda, and we will be writing a character description. The last character description I think we wrote was when we were doing Africa back in September and October, and we wrote a character description about Simba. Now, if you remember, when we wrote the character description, we introduced the character, so we just said who they were. We spoke about the character's appearance, so that means what the character looks like. We wrote about the character's personality, so what the character is like on the inside. And finally, we wrote about the character's likes and dislikes, the things they like doing, things they don't like doing, things like that. These are some of the different characters in Matilda. So we've got Matilda, Miss Honey, Mr. Wormwood, who's Matilda's dad, Mrs. Wormwood, Matilda's mum, and Michael Wormwood, who's Matilda's brother. We are going to be writing a character description about Miss Trunchbull. Before we read any of the book or we watch clips of the film, what you need to do now is to create a sheet that looks like this. This is going to be your idea sheet where you are going to plan your character description. So you're going to draw a picture in the middle of Miss Trunchbull. It doesn't have to be this detailed. You don't even need to draw a picture. If you want to just write Miss Trunchbull with a cloud around it, that will work as well. You're going to have a box with the subheading, Who is she? Another box with the subheading, Appearance. And I've written outside in brackets just to remind you that appearance means what she's like on the outside. The subheading personality, and I've written inside to remind you that personality means what she's like on the inside. And then two smaller boxes for her likes and her dislikes. So right now you're going to pause the video and make your plan look similar to this. When you have finished that, hit play again and we'll carry on. So just like for the poetry unit that we did last week, I have created a Padlet for you all to share your ideas and for you to borrow ideas from other children in Year 2. So I'm going to click it just to show you what it looks like when it's blank. So this is the Padlet, and I've started a post-it here. So it says, Miss Trunchbull character description. Who is she? Her appearance, her personality, her likes, her dislikes, and any amazing adjectives that you might want to include when you write your character description. So once we have read the book, and we can come to the Padlet and write down any of your ideas, and you can also borrow other people's ideas that you see. So today we are going to read a bit about who Miss Trunchbull is and what she looks like. Hi guys! So now I'm going to read part of the book that explains who Miss Trunchbull is and what she looks like. The village school for younger children was a bleak brick building called Cruncham Hall Primary School. It had about 250 pupils, aged from 5 to just under 12 years old. The head teacher, the boss, the supreme commander of this establishment, was a formidable, middle-aged lady whose name was Miss Trunchbull. Miss Trunchbull, the headmistress, was something else altogether. She was a gigantic holy terror, a fierce, tyrannical monster who frightened the life out of pupils and teachers alike. There was an aura of menace about her, even at a distance, and when she came up close, you could almost feel the dangerous heat radiating from her as from a red-hot rod of metal. When she marched, Miss Trunchbull never walked. She always marched like a stormtrooper with long strides and arms a-swinging. When she marched along a corridor, you could actually hear her snorting as she went, and if a group of children happened to be in her path, she ploughed right on through them like a tank, with small people bouncing off her from left and right. Thank goodness we don't meet many people like her in this world, although they do exist, and all of us are lucky to come across at least one of them in a lifetime. If you ever do, you should behave as you would if you met an enraged rhinoceros out in the bush. Climb up to the nearest tree and stay there until it has gone away. This woman, in all her eccentricities and in her appearance, is almost impossible to describe, but I shall make an attempt to do so a little later on. I'm going to skip a bit. This is Miss Honey describing Miss Trunchbull. Let me, for your own good, tell you something about Miss Trunchbull. She insists upon strict discipline throughout the school, and if you take my advice, you will do your very best to behave yourselves in her presence. Never argue with her. Never answer back. Always do as she says. If you get on the wrong side of Miss Trunchbull, she can liquidize you like a carrot in a kitchen blender. It's nothing to laugh about, Lavender. Take that grin off your face. All of you will be wise to remember that Miss Trunchbull deals very, very severely with anyone who gets out of line in this school. Have you got that message? Next bit. Normally, Miss Honey was terrified of the headmistress and kept well away from her, but at this moment she felt ready to take on anybody. She knocked on the door of the dreaded private study. "Enter!" boomed the deep and dangerous voice of Miss Trunchbull. Miss Honey went in. Now, most head teachers are chosen because they possess a number of fine qualities. They understand children, and they have the children's best interests at heart. They are sympathetic. They are fair, and they are deeply interested in education. Miss Trunchbull possessed none of these qualities, and how she ever got her present job was a mystery. She was, above all, the most formidable female. She had once been a famous athlete, and even now the muscles were still clearly in evidence. You could see them in the bull neck, in the big shoulders, in the thick arms, in the sinewy wrists, and in the powerful legs. Looking at her, you got the feeling that this was someone who could bend iron bars and tear telephone directories in half. Her face, I'm afraid, was neither a thing of beauty nor a joy forever. She had an obstinate chin, a cruel mouth, and small, arrogant eyes. And as for her clothes, they were, to say the least, extremely odd. She always had on a brown cotton smock, which was pinched around her waist with a wide leather belt. The belt was fastened in front with an enormous silver buckle. The massive thighs which emerged from out of the smock were encased in a pair of extraordinary breeches, bottle green in colour and made of coarse twill. These breeches reached just below the knees, and from there on down she sported green stockings with turn-up tops, which displayed her calf muscles to perfection. On her feet she wore flat-heeled brown brogues with leather flaps. She looked, in short, more like a rather eccentric and bloodthirsty follower of the staghounds than the headmistress of a nice school for children. When Miss Honey entered the study, Miss Trunchbull was standing beside her huge desk with a look of scowling impatience on her face. "Yes, Miss Honey," she said. "What is it that you want? You're looking very flushed and flustered this morning. What's the matter with you? Have you got those stinkers flicking spitballs at you again?" "No, headmistress, nothing like that." "Well, what is it then? Get on with it. I'm a busy woman." As she spoke, she reached out and poured herself a glass of water from a jug that was always on her desk. "There is a little girl in my class called Matilda Wormwood," Miss Honey began. "That's the daughter of the man who owns Wormwood Motors in the village," Miss Trunchbull barked. She hardly ever spoke in a normal voice. She either barked or shouted. So that's the bit that we're going to read today. what I want you to do now is to go back to this sheet. Let's see if I can get to it. And I want you to write down anything that you remember from what I've just read about who Miss Trunchbull is and her appearance. Now, you might have to watch the video again and listen to me read the story again so you can catch everything. I also want you to add to the Padlet. So here is a post-it note of the different things, like who is she and her appearance. And we haven't done personality or likes or dislikes yet. So you can just fill in who she is and her appearance. So for example, oops, see if it's going to work. Who is she? She is the head mistress of Trunchbull. Her appearance. She is very muscly, but has lots of big muscles. Lots of big muscles. Okay, so you're going to fill in the who is she section and the appearance section. Bye, guys.